We're going to go through the job standards in Cabinet Solutions, but before that, I'm going to show you how you can change your units of measurements under Tools, Options, Units and Conversion, and then Units. So inches with fractions, inches with decimal, feet and inches, millimeters, and tenths of a millimeter. And then you can change your precision between from a 16th to all the way up to 64th. There are two types of standards in this program. There's the job standards, which apply to all of the cabinets in your job, and there's the cabinet standards, which, like if I click on this cabinet, I click on cabinet standards. These standards are only for this particular cabinet. And if I was to change the standards for this cabinet, it's no longer going to follow the job standards because I've indicated to the program that I want this cabinet to be different than the other cabinets in the job as soon as I make edits to it. To open the job standards, I go to the top of the program to the standards menu and then adjust job standards. The first option in the top left corner of the job standards tells the program whether I want to work in face frame or European standards, and you can switch back and forth at any point. So let's just see what it does here. If I click on European, apply to the job, it's going to get rid of all of my face frames. Then I'll switch back, apply it. Right below the toggle for face frame and European, you have the load standards from file and save standards to file, and that simply lets me load an existing standard if I already had a standard that I want to use for this job, or save standards to file if I went through and set up these standards and I wanted to save them for future use, for reuse. The next section is initial values. Like it says here, these changes to these initial values will not affect cabinets that I've already placed on the floor plan. They only apply to new cabinets that you place going forward. So an example would be cabinet heights and depths. These would be my default sizes for these categories of cabinets. When you place a cabinet on the floor plan, a base cabinet, for example, is going to default to 34.5 inches tall. But there's a dialog box where you can modify that height before you actually put it on the floor plan. But these are just your default, whatever you want your default numbers to be. And then there's these other areas in the initial values, which I'm not going to cover in this video. Now let's look at construction methods. And that's under General Setup. So the first thing we want to establish is how you will be assembling your cabinets. If you use dado construction, there are places to put the depth of each dado. If you dowel or butt joint and screw your box parts, simply turn off the dado box. For face frame construction, you can butt joint or mortise and tenon, and you can define your tenon size. If you notice on the right, when I clicked on mortise and tenon, this illustration popped up. For many of the standards, you will find illustrations that will open up when you click into a particular category of the standards. Now we're going to look at construction methods 2. In construction methods 2, you can set your top panel construction, Checking tops and uppers, that's if you want your upper cabinets to have top panels. And the same thing for tops and bases. If you want your base cabinets to have top panels. But you might not want them to have top panels. Maybe you just have stretchers instead of a top panel. Next is side panel or end panel construction. The weight of your countertops and base cabinets has to be transferred to the floor. Typically, this is accomplished either through the side panels of the cabinet going to the floor or through a separate toe assembly that the cabinet sits on. Related to this is the length of your side panels. By default, Cabinet Solutions runs all the finished ends or exposed ends to the bottom of the face frame, if a face frame is being used. The unfinished ends by default do not go to the bottom of the face frame. They come down to the bottom of the bottom panel. Cabinet Solutions allows you to change this to where all the panels come down to the bottom of the face frame by selecting unfinished end panels same height as finished end panels down here. Or unfinished end panels can sit on the bottom like a partition by selecting end panels same size as partitions here. Finally, you can choose to run all your base end panels to the floor. If you toggle these settings, you'll get an illustration to help you understand what the setting change is going to do to the cabinet. Next, we'll look at doors and drawer fronts. In this section, you can choose the door style you want on your cabinets for this particular job. Cabinet Solutions allows you a lot of flexibility in placing doors. You can place different door styles on upper cabinets than on base cabinets, and different styles on drawers. You can change the door style of any cabinet within a room, or even change the door style of one particular opening in a cabinet. The door standards section allows you to enter the standards that control the production of the cut list for the door parts. Even if you do not build your own doors, you may want to set the sizes to the approximate size that your door company uses, so your drawings will most closely represent what your customer will actually be getting. You can change the materials, frame and panel material for the door. There's a list of materials that are included with the library, the default library that you get with the software, but you can also add your own materials or remove materials that we included and you don't use. You can change the panel styles of the doors and drawer fronts, the overlays, and this diagram helps you understand the terminology we use. You can go to other standards to change things such as the frame and panel thickness, style and rail widths, and more. And this is where you can choose to change the standards for base doors, upper doors, and drawer fronts separately. So in doors and drawer fronts, you can change the styles and rails for doors and drawer fronts. But on the right-hand side of the standards, if you're in face frame, you can change the style and rail settings for the cabinet box. So if at the top of the style section, I've got my finished end style. It's going to use 1.5 inches if the left style is on a finished end or an exposed end, which the program defines as an end that's not touching another cabinet or appliance. And then you have unfinished end style cabinet by cabinet. That's where the cabinet's touching another cabinet. Cabinet against a wall. Unfinished end style by appliance. Those all have different settings so that the style size automatically changes depending on these different scenarios. These are my rail settings. Top, center, and bottom rails, and bottom rail offset. And then material types. We'll go to cabinet materials. This is where you define what material to use for all the different cabinet parts. If you go to edit material list, you can add or remove materials. This part has nothing to do with material sizes, just the names. And then you have drawer, box, and rollout materials there. Now, material thicknesses is where you define the thicknesses of the materials. Next, we'll look at drawers. In this section, you will enter the different specifications regarding how you build your drawers. Drawer box construction methods. Drawer box plus front. This style is made up of a four-sided box with a bottom. The drawer front is then attached to the box as a sixth piece. Drawer box includes front. This style is constructed using the actual drawer front as a structural piece of the drawer. The sides and bottom are typically dadoed or dovetailed into the drawer front. And then you define the dado depth. Drawer box standards. Drawer height, opening less. Subtract the drawer height from the height of the opening. Enter the resulting number. This number will determine the height of the drawer box parts. Some drawer guide manufacturers list the clearance needed between drawer box and drawer opening. Do not enter the desired drawer height, but how much smaller the drawer height is than the opening height. There's more. You can look at the online help manual to get a detailed explanation of every part of the drawer box standards and the rest of the job standards that I just briefly covered. So let's see how quickly and easily you can just change all the doors and drawer fronts. I'll go to doors and drawer fronts. We'll do the base doors first. I'll just change them to slab doors. And then apply to job. Let's try another style. We'll do arch top for the upper cabinets. And then 5-piece for the base cabinets. Now, this is one of the most important parts of setting up your standards. Once you go in through all the standards and you've entered all your changes, it's going to say the standards file currently loaded is unspecified, which means that you've made changes and these standards don't match anything that's currently saved in the software. So if you intend to keep and reuse all the changes that you've made, you're going to want to save the standards to a file. Just call it whatever's going to make you remember it. Maybe it's the material, and then you save it. I hope this video gives you a good start setting up your job standards. If you have any questions, call 800-283-9577 or send an email to support@customcabinetsoftware.com.